Yes, we would continue with a bit of delay, but we hope it's okay. Yes, I would like to introduce you to Florent Maurin, founder and CEO of the Paris-based studio The Pixel Hunt. He's a trained journalist who worked in his business for 10 years, and he then founded The Pixel Hunt, a game dev studio focused on reality-based games, we heard that already, or reality-inspired games, and games that stand out by the way they are written. I read that on the web page. And the main titles of your studio include Inua, a story on in ice and time, with in co-production with Ico and Arte, that takes up the real story and mystery about the British Franklin expedition in the 19th century. Then The Wreck, where you try to replay and rewrite the traumatic day of a failed screenwriter. And Wednesdays with Pierre Corminet and Arte, that was released 2 weeks ago. A game about a quite heavy topic about incest that is told in a quite different and unique way. Yes, it is. And of course, the topic also of the talk we are going to hear now, Bury Me My Love, also in co-production with Arte, that came out 10 years ago, so it's quite old, but its story about a refugee with whom you are in contact, it's a family member, through instant messages while she tries to find a way to get to Europe, to Germany in particular, is an immensely actual topic. And last week, on April 4th, 2025, the Greek Supreme Court announced that the way how the refugees are treated by the Greek government coming from Turkey as non-refugees, because in Turkey there's no war, so they're not refugees, is the Supreme Court decided that this is against the law. And in the game, actually, you have the situation that you come from Turkey and you are a refugee and you want to enter Greece or Bulgaria or where you want to, when it gets you in the course of the game. Yes, and we are very happy to have you now here. Thank you for coming and talking about the concept of helplessness in games with Bury Me My Love. Thank you. A very warm welcome to you, Florent. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. Yes, so actually, Bury Me My Love was released in 2017, so 8 years ago. But sadly, it's still very relevant nowadays. I had the first slide to present myself. I used to have long hair. It's gone now because I kept my hair growing while making The Wreck, just to physically show people how long it takes to make a video game. So I started like this and I finished like this. And then when the game was released, I cut my hair. So now I'm back to point one, but I have to find a publisher to fund my next game so I can let my hair grow back. I used to be a journalist for 10 years for Bayard Presse, so a children's journalist, and then for Le Monde, which is a French newspaper, as you can tell by my wonderful accent. And yes, I founded The Pixel Hunt in 2013 with one idea in mind, which would be to make what we call reality-inspired games, because first I was a journalist, so I was used to having this specific relationship to reality, that is to feel compelled to tell the world about the world, which is kind of recursive. And second, I think that it's important when you are making an indie studio to have a clear identity so that you are known for something. And for me, there are so many stories worth telling in the real world, and games as media are so exploring those topics that I thought it would be a good idea to focus on that. Commercially, spoiler, not so much, but intellectually, very rewarding. So I designed the Bury Me My Love from a game design perspective, which is what I'm going to discuss with you today. And we co-wrote it with a friend, Pierre Corminet, who is also the author behind Wednesdays. Wednesdays was out 2 weeks ago, and it's a very personal game from him because it's almost autobiographical. The topic is very frightening, but hopefully it's handled with care. So I encourage you to maybe try it. But now for the people who don't know anything about Bury My Love, I will show you the trailer for the game. So this is the way we presented the project to the world. From a marketing standpoint, Bury My Love is a game about a person who's trying to flee from their country. Sorry, I'm trying to just skip to the next slide. Yes. But creatively and more importantly, this is what I call a reality-inspired game. So it's based on true events, of course. The idea from the game stemmed from what happened in Syria in 2014 and 2015. And more specifically, it's also triggered by an article that I read in French newspaper Le Monde that was called "The Journey of a Syrian Migrant as Told by Her WhatsApp Conversations." And the article was a translation of a series of messages that this young woman called Dana sent to a family and got back from her family while she was trying to reach Germany, where she had some family already installed. Whereas her mother, who is a political opponent to Bashar al-Assad, who was at the time a political opponent to Bashar al-Assad, didn't want to leave the country, so stayed behind. So in order to stay in touch with her mother and also stay in touch with her family, both in Syria and also in Germany, she used WhatsApp, because you may or may not know that lots of migrants nowadays have a cell phone and use it to stay in touch with their families and gather information and just use that as a tool for their very risky journey. So when I read this article, I found it absolutely incredible for one specific reason. It is because the article showed that Dana and her friends and families send each other completely trivial messages. They sent emojis. They asked for the result of Arsenal, a soccer game. They just joked and said nice things to each other, exactly the way I use WhatsApp with my family. But then, 3 messages later, they would ask for which smuggler they should go with. They would tell their family that they would not know where they would spend the next night. They would make an assessment of their remaining money that they had to finish the trip. And suddenly, this would not feel like my use of WhatsApp at all. And this absolute difference between how familiar this conversation felt and how completely alien it felt made me think that this is not the way we are presenting those people. Because at the time, all the discussion about Syrian migrants were about numbers. How many should Germany welcome? How many should France welcome? How many are they? And what are their backgrounds? How many males? How many females? And you would see on TV the masses, faceless masses, crowding and packing at borders. But you would almost never hear about the real stories. And this is the moment where I thought to myself, this is a very important thing to tell as a story. I'm not an activist. I didn't want to change the world. I didn't want to do this game for a specific purpose. I just felt completely in shock that I had to dig deep into Le Monde's pages to have that part of the reality covered. And I thought that if we can as a team do a video game that just spreads that reality to as many people as possible, that should be interesting. So we contacted the journalist, Lucie Soulier. And she almost hung up on me, telling me, you want to make a video game about this topic, you're completely crazy. Video games are not for that. But she almost hung up. And then I was able to tell her what my background was. We had gone to the same journalism school, so that helps. She knew that we had roughly the same education. And ultimately, she told me, you know what? This is not my story. This is Dana's story. So I will tell Dana about your project. And she is the one who is going to decide whether she wants to help you or not. And oddly enough, it took like 2 minutes to Dana to decide that she wanted to help us. Because she told us very fast, I went through so much and it was so incredibly complicated for me that I want as many people as possible to know what happened and what the reality of that is. So she accepted to work with us on that game. Dana, so who is Dana? I should have skipped the slide. So that's an extract of the article by Le Monde. You know, all the conversations she had with her family, she accepted to give those to Lucie Soulier and get them translated in French, so players could actually read the conversation. Of course, all the very specific personal details were just written out of the conversation. But the general, and the article is still online, so if you are curious, you can find it. It's in French though. But when you work on what I call reality-inspired games, you can't do exactly what you want with the stories you are telling, the way you would do it if you work in maybe a fantasy setting or maybe any other setting that just comes out of your imagination. You are working with a material that is partly other people's lives, and by doing so, you have a responsibility that you have to live up to. So first, you have to respect reality. Bury My Love is a fiction, nor the hero of the game is a fictional character. It's not a biographical game about Dana. It's not Dana's story, not exactly. I will go into the specifics a little bit later. But still, it's very close to what lots of people have actually experienced. So you have to take care of that, and you have to be respectful of that. And to do that, you have to document yourself. So the first 3 or 4 months of the production of the game were only Pierre Corbinet and me sending each other links to emails or calling people or going to a migrant center to do interviews, and only gathering documentation to get a good feeling of what we were going to talk about and how we were going to write as respectfully as possible. And of course, listen to people. It's absolutely mandatory. You can't come with your imagination and your projection of what the reality you're talking about is. You have to get an actual source of what it is so that you are as truthful as possible to the reality you want to put in your game. And one of the don'ts, one of the things that you should not do, is do what games usually do, is be player-centric. Most games, and that's completely normal, they tend to be player power fantasies. They have the player at the center, and they want the player to have a good time and experience a good moment and level up and become better and become stronger. This is something that is true for lots of different types of games, but if you make a reality-inspired game, the rules are dictated by reality and not by how much you want to please your players. So it's probably a game design rule that lots of game design teachers would strongly advise against. But if you want to handle reality, you have to try to describe reality also in the rules that you implement in your game and not only in the text of the stories you are telling. So we talked a lot with Dana, we talked a lot with other people, we read a lot of articles, and after this documentation phase, we learned 3 big things about that topic that we wanted to convey. First, when you're trying to flee your country and reach another one, things will go sideways. No matter how much you prepared, no matter how much you anticipated, no matter how much money you have and you are able to mobilize for this task, things will go wrong, and it's nothing you can anticipate completely. So if you want to make a video game about that, you have to account for that possibility of things going sideways. Second, the actual use of smartphones is both a blessing but also a curse. Why? Because before smartphone existed, people were leaving their families, and the families didn't have any kind of news for months, sometimes years, and sometimes never. And this, of course, was hard. But being able to stay in contact with the person you love day after day, minute after minute, and having a constant flood of testimony of the hardships they face is also very hard, because you are thousands of kilometers away and you are unable to really help them, but you know day after day all the hardships they face. And so this connection is a good thing, but also can be a very bad thing. And so that's also what a lot of people told us. The worst part was not about being physically separated from the person, was not about not knowing when you are going to be reunited, but it was the helplessness. It was the inability, the physical inability, to actually do something to help the person you love, because they are thousands of kilometers away, telling you about what's happening to them and the dire situation they are in. And so with Bury My Love, we had to ask ourselves this question: how do you translate that into a video game? It's a very complicated question. Hopefully we were young and dumb, and we didn't put too many thought into it to begin with, and we were able to iterate on it and gradually realize that the game, Bury My Love, was actually about that, and find solutions to convey that as we built and wrote the game. The first thing we did is that we placed you as the player in a situation where you are not on the ground. You are not playing as Noor, the young woman who leaves Syria. You are playing as Majd, her husband, who cannot leave Syria because he has to take care of his mother and his grandfather, who are still alive in Syria. The reason we did that is because, first, it was the situation Dana was in, and second, we thought it would be completely inappropriate to have you being in the migrant's shoes, taking direct decisions. We needed to have a degree of separation between you as a player and you and the main character. And we actually implemented 2 degrees of separation, because it's not even about you. Even you playing as Majd, what Majd is going to say is not what you want to say, is what he thinks he should say in such situation. So you're more like the Jiminy Cricket on Majd's shoulder, because some players told us, but I would never say that in such situations. And we could answer them, yes, you would probably not say that, but it's not, the game is not about you. It's about this Syrian couple that is separated. So it's important to forget about yourself a little bit while playing this game. So how did we manage to have you feeling like you're not the one who's on the ground? First, we tried to make Dana as Noor, sorry for the word slip. I don't know how to say that in English anyway. Noor feels alive because we wanted the game to feel like you were talking to an actual person. So the game plays in real time, and you most of the time have to wait for Noor to be ready to talk to you. So if she is, you will receive a notification on your phone telling you that she reached a point or that she needs some advice for something. And then you will have a conversation with her. And then you can put your phone away because she tells you, I'm going to be out of phone service for a while. So as soon as I get back coverage, I will get back to you. So you can just put your phone away. You're not the one who's deciding when to play. Nor to feel as a real person is written consistently. she has a personality. The personality is inspired by Dana, of course, but also by other testimonies we had. For instance, she will not always tell you the truth. Why? Not because she's a liar per se, but because she knows that you are not on the ground. And she knows that most of the time you cannot do anything to actually help her. So sometimes she will minimize situations in which she's in just because she doesn't want to hurt you. If you pay real close attention, you will spot those lies. And you will realize that the time she told you she had a good night, actually later in the game, she will confess that she slept under a bridge because she didn't have any money to pay for any accommodation. You will not realize it if you don't pay attention, but if you pay attention, you will. This is exactly inspired by what Dana told us, which is sometimes I was lying to my family, first to protect them, but also because retelling every hard situation I was in at the end of the day didn't make me any good. And I knew that it wouldn't make them any good. So why do that? Might as well lie and just keep it for myself. Another thing that we did is to stage hesitation. So on the left part of the screen here, what you see is the script for the game. And you see that we have this command that is called fake 1000 milliseconds and then wait for 2 seconds. The result to that in the game is that someone is typing, the sign that is known as someone is typing appears, and then disappears, and then reappears, and then there's a message coming. And through that very seemingly insignificant interface, we convey the fact that she will sometimes hesitate, and that participates in making you feel like she's a real person and she's alive at the other end of the smartphone. Also, as I mentioned, you play as Majd, but you don't really play as Majd, because Majd is a person, is a character in and of himself, and sometimes the only answers that will be available to you will be answers that suck. Sometimes you will give bad advice. Sometimes you will get angry, even though you as a player know that you should not get angry. Sometimes you will say things that you regret because it's not you, the player, who says them. It's the character, Majd, who says them. And this allows for conveying the feeling of helplessness too, because you realize that Majd is not as cool and tempered as you, the player, comfortably playing on your iPhone 17. I don't know what number the iPhones are at nowadays. You are playing as someone whose wife is risking her life. And that's something that we could also stage with the Majd's answers. But most important, most of the time, Majd is in the dark. Most of the time, you are in the dark. As I mentioned earlier, when Noor tells you, I will be back in 2 hours, and then for 2 days, you don't have any notification from the game, it's not a bug, it's a feature. Because something happens, but you don't know what happens. You, as a player, feel a tiny, tiny glimpse of what it feels like to be in that situation. Of course, not the real thing, and I would not wish it on any of you. This is not a game about pretending to be a migrant or pretending to be a migrant's husband. This is a game about feeling empathy and understanding the personal stories behind the games. So what did we do with waiting times? First, there's 3 statuses for Noor in the game. She can be online, which is the default status when she's sending you messages. Or if we write in the script, wait for 30 minutes while showing busy, the busy status appears, which means she has coverage. So you still have a link with her as a player, but she can't talk right now, so you have to wait. Or there's the offline status, which shows in red, which means at the moment she doesn't have coverage. It can mean that she's just in a zone where there's no cell phone coverage. It can also mean that she broke her phone. It can also mean that something happens to her. And you don't know exactly what the real reason why she's offline is. Of course, you can play with only one eye and not really notice this waiting times and this online status. But if you pay attention, if you exert your empathy, you will realize that sometimes there are sources to be worried, even in the tiniest details of the game. And what we also did is sometimes we made the game absolutely not interactive. For instance, here in this part of the script, you've been waiting for 27 minutes to get news from Noor. And then Noor tells you that you are going to be cut out because she's going to cross the border. And then she tells you that she will buy a SIM card when she gets to Beirut. There's not even a choice included because choices in our script are materialized with little stars. So only you take your phone out of your pocket, you read 4 messages, and then you are going to wait for 79 other minutes. So once again, we tried to put you in situations where you're not even active as a player, you're just waiting, and you're just feeling helpless, and you're just like, the mere act of reading the messages and being there for Noor is the best and most loving thing that you can actually do. The other things that we decided to implement in the game is that as a player, you are often not in the situation when you are in control of what's happening. Nor, from a systems design perspective, which is something I hate to describe Nor as a system, because she's grown up on me as a character, of course, but she's also a system. She's defined by 3 variables: her money, the money she has at any given moment of the game, the love relationship that she has with you, because you can say things that will make her hate you or make her love you more, and her morale. And generally, you can have influence on her morale, but it's also the things that happen to her outside of what you tell her that will influence her morale. So she's defined only by those 3 variables. And your choices as a player will have an impact on those variables. Sometimes you will be presented with direct decisions. She will ask you a very simple question. Should I take this plane or should I not take it? And you can answer either take it or don't take it. And sometimes she will actually do what you tell her and you will have direct control over the situation. But it's actually very, or at least fairly rare in the game. Most decisions will be blind. She will ask you about something. You will say, I don't know, because of course you have incomplete information about the situation. And you will suggest something. But first, you will not have any way of knowing whether your suggestion was the good one, if there is some such thing as a good decision. And you will not have any way of knowing whether she will trust you with that and do as you're told, because sometimes she's the one who's on the ground and she will do something differently because she will feel it differently. Of course, this is another thing that game design teacher will strongly advise against. You do not dispossess players from agency and control like that, except when you're making reality-inspired games. What you also don't usually do is do things with choices that seemingly are unimportant, but in the end have cumulative influence. For instance, here you can see that you can answer to Noor with 3 different emojis. 2 emojis in which you laugh at the joke she's making, and 1 in which you're making a serious face, a concerned face, like it's not a good moment to be joking. And those emojis have a slight impact on the love variable, the relationship you have with her. The first 2 emojis make her love you slightly more, and the third one slightly less. Doesn't seem as important as a decision as you can make, but at some point later in the story, the accumulation of lots of decisions might have moved Noor away from you or closer to you, and so you might face a moment where she has to make a decision, and she will make a different decision depending on what your relationship with her is at that point. In any case, we made the choice to never display those variables, to never show players what the consequences of their choices are on the variables and in which respect. Because that was the whole point of the game, not making you feel like you're in control, not giving you the tools to min-max your decisions and be able to do the choices that you want to do to reach the good end, partly because there is no good end. We'll see that later. At one point, we considered displaying a mood indicator that would depend both from Noor's feeling towards you. Does she love you very much or not so much? And also her morale. Is she feeling really good or completely disheartened? And we would display a different emoji depending on where in that situation you were. But we decided to kill that feature and not use it in game because we thought it would be too extra diegetic. It will take you out of the story and put you in the position of the player, trying to guess what you should say to push the indicator in the right direction, which is something that we absolutely didn't want you to do. The third part, and probably the toughest one, is that the conclusion we came to during the documentation phase was that life is definitely not fair, specifically when you're in our situation, it's absolutely not fair. And when you're a migrant, risking your life, death is part of it. So we had this big conversation with the team about death. Should we include ends in the game where Noor dies? On the one hand, it felt very harsh to do that because we are talking about real people, and talking about real people dying is always complicated. On the other hand, it's exactly the reason why we finally decided to have 2 or 3 different situations in which you can actually die, Noor can actually die, because we are talking about real people. And because the reality of those people is that they are risking their lives, it felt not up to the real life situation to hide that from the player. So we felt that we had to include that in the game. There are 19 different outcomes in Bury Me My Love. You can reach 19 different endings. And we tried to represent the variety of situations in which actual migrants end up after the end of their journey. Some reach a good ending. They are able to relocate in the country that they were aiming for, or some other country where they are well treated and they are able to resettle and have a better life. The vast majority of them is mixed. It's the European administrative hell in which you are Dublinized, in which you are in a situation when you have to apply for resettlement in the country in which you have the first contact with the police and are recorded as an undocumented migrant, even though you have absolutely nothing to do with said country. Lots of situations like that in the documentation we gathered, so it's the most probable ending that you can reach in the game. Some are bad. You're caught by the police, you're mistreated, you're put in camps, you end up in camps in Calais, for instance. Some are very bad, including death situations. And there are 19 different endings, and there are 39 ways to end a playthrough. So some playthroughs will bring you back to the same ending. But we were happy that we were able to show the diversity of all the testimonies that we just gathered in the documentation phase in the endings that we show in the game. But what about the unfairness of the situation? Well, let me tell you about a specific sequence of the game. At one moment, you arrive in Izmir, in Turkey, and you can decide to go with smuggler A or smuggler B. And you have absolutely no way of knowing which smuggler is better than which. Someone told you about one and told you good thing about them, but you're not so sure about that person who just advised you to go with that person. And the other one you just bumped into, so you know nothing about it. But you have to make a decision. You have to, as Majd, try to help Noor make a decision. So at a moment in the game, you can either advise for A or for B. And then later in the same localization, so in Izmir, Noor is going to go to shop for things before she goes with the smuggler on the boat. And you can either tell her to buy seasickness pills or a flashlight. Why? Because of the gist of the moment. what are you thinking about? You don't have any way of knowing whether what will be useful in the boat trip. You just can decide something in the direction your heart will send you. But you have absolutely no control about the decision you're making. So this makes for 4 final situations when Noor takes the boat and her goal is to arrive to the Greek islands. In one of the 4 combinations, Noor is okay. Noor arrives in the Greek island. The trip was relatively safe. She didn't have any problems. In the second and third possibilities, Noor makes it, but she's fairly traumatized because she's seen someone fall off the boat or someone was burned with gasoline fumes, as it happens on those boats that cross the Mediterranean Sea. And on the fourth possibility, you get this audio message. And when you get an audio message in the game, it means that you've reached an ending. And this is the audio message you get. But there's no audio, so I don't know if it's normal. We can hear it, but faintly. It says 100%. Yes. Sorry for that. I will try to do that.
I don't know if you're going to get this.
No, it's 100%.
I'm freaking out.
Okay, well, let's imagine you heard a message. It's supposed to be the emotional moment in the presentation. It's just a message of Noor telling you that she's drowning, basically. And the game ends there, roughly, abruptly, very unfairly, because you didn't do anything wrong. It's just how fucked up the situation that the person you are learning about experience life. So, in the end, we also use something that a lot of migrants told us, that they could not afford to project themselves into the destination. They could not think about the arrival. The only thing they could do is to leave the journey. And you know the saying, "It's the journey that matters." In that specific situation, that takes on a completely different meaning. So we had to map out the different locations that the people we interviewed and talked with, and especially Dana, but not only, had to go through to try to reach Europe. And then we mapped them into locations in the game. And then inside those locations, we mapped that more precisely with all the choices that you can make that make up for a very complicated graph. We wanted you, as a player, to feel that you are on a journey that's unexpected, that's impossible to understand really, and that's ongoing, and that you have to help Noor keep pushing forward as well as you can. There will be good times. There will be moments of happiness, moments of joy, because she's reached the country and she got the paperwork to be able to cross the border, because she met with a kid and she made a new friend, because she went through hikes in the French Alps to pass the border between Italy and France. There will be bad moments where she will make bad encounters with racists, when she will discover the extent to which her country has been destroyed by civil war, when she will be beaten up by police, for instance. And there will be lots of moments in between in which Noor will have to face the situation she was absolutely not prepared to, but she will have to, because life has to go on and she has to keep moving forward. And how to make players feel a little bit of that? Well, the first way we did is that we decided not to implement any interactive save points. Of course, the game saves your progression because Noor stays in touch with you. But once you reach an ending, you cannot go back in the past and say, this is the moment where I fucked up, I should have chosen another possibility. You cannot do that because we didn't develop that possibility and we did not implement it in the game. Because we didn't want you to feel your relationship to Noor as a relationship with a character of a video game, but as something a little bit more intimate. So when you reach an ending, what can you do? You have only two possibilities. The first one is to restart from day one, because what we wanted is to use Noor as a metaphor for one of the hundreds of thousands of different journeys of different people who have been undertaken to flee the civil war and to find solace in another country. So each journey had to be a completely new one. So you can restart from day one, but you can also do the second possibility, which is the one I would advise for, is to never play the game again. The idea, ideally, is to play Very Malov one time, and then to think about it, and then maybe to decide to do something about the situation you are now familiar with in the real world if you want. But it's not a game that you should try to reach all the different endings in. And it's not a game that you should try to win. It's just a game that is here for the experience, and I think that's good enough. Thanks a lot. If you have any question, I would be glad to answer. So no, there are no random events, but there are events that are so dependent on hidden variables that they feel random to the player. So everything is scripted. We know that if you do a specific chain of choices, you will always get the same outcome. But the blurriness, the fuzziness is because sometimes one different emoji can completely change the way the story will fork at some point. So it feels random to the player, but nothing is random in the game. Because I think that, oddly enough, it's way easier to control, to give the feeling of things happening in an unfair way if you control what's happening and not if things are random. And also because I think that we wanted to be able to put all the situation that we knew about and that we learned about during the documentation phase in-game. And so we wanted to be able to say, this is going to happen if she reached that point in that specific mindset. And nothing in the documentation felt random. So we never felt the urge to use randomness in the game. Voilà. But now that you're mentioning it, maybe we could and we should, but we didn't feel that need.
Thank you so much for the talk. It's quite interesting to hear about the game at all. Also, the story itself was very moving. I was thinking I will probably play it later. That also got me thinking. You mentioned at the beginning that it was not a commercial success, or like in general, the reality-inspired games are not.
Yes.
And I was just wondering, how did you then deal with this? Did you know from the beginning that maybe there will be limited success, and how would you approach to do such games to get it to wider audience? Because I feel like that's quite an important part of trying to tell these stories. No.
Yes. So yes, I knew from the I would have been very, very, very surprised if the game had been commercially successful. It has not been a catastrophe because over the years it has sold, I think, 100,000 copies. Lots of them on sale for very cheap because even to begin with, the price of the game was very cheap. I think it was like €4. And it was out in 2017, and I think we recouped 2 years ago or last year maybe the initial investment, and then we ported it to consoles and PC, and this is not recouped yet. So there are two ways for me to mitigate that risk. The first one is to only make games that are relatively small scoped and cheap. And lots of it is my time as a writer or a game designer, but technically they are never very complicated. So the full budget for the game was €140,000, which is not a small sum of money, but not a big one either. I heard like €5 million for a runner, so not in that ballpark. This is the first thing. Second thing is that in France we have very good public funding system. So 50% of the budget of the game was publicly funded, which is a lot of help for us. And the third thing is that I created Burimalov to the Pixelant to make such games. But of course, we have other activities, like work for hire activities. So the money that we save in those activities helps us fund the game that we make for the meaning that they have for us, and hopefully the meaning that they have for the people who play them. The last game that we made, Wednesdays, it's about child abuse, so we knew it would not be a commercial success. I think we've sold 700 units in next to a month, so this is not a commercial success. But the amount of messages we got from people who played it or who just heard about someone making a game about that topic, the incredible, like the density of the Steam reviews and what the people say is just like, it's just what takes me out of bed in the morning, and that's, yeah.
That goes into the direction of my question. Did they not play the game, or did you get feedback from other migrants? What did they think of it?
So what's funny is that not only did Dana play the game, but she helped us write it. You know, so we were communicated with her through WhatsApp. So first she told us everything about her personal story. So if you make a very specific list of choices, you can actually have exactly the same journey that Dana had, exactly the same. If you change from those choices, you will venture into other possibilities that come from other testimonies from other people. But you can actually experience her own experience firsthand by doing the right choices, which I don't remember which one they are, but I know that it's possible. Then, when we were writing the game, anytime we had a question, we would send her a message, ask her questions, or even send her passages from the game for her to read and to provide us with feedback. And for instance, Pierre Corbinet, my co-writer, he wrote the scene in Izmir, the boat scene. And he contacted me and told me, I wrote the scene, but I feel like it's a bit much. It sounds very grim, and maybe I overdid it. It sounds faithful to what I read on the topic, but I don't know. How could we check? And I said, let's contact Dana and ask her. And we sent Dana the passage. And she read it and she said, no, this is a walk in the park compared to what I've experienced. You have to be clear about, we were in the dark, we walked for 9 hours, they had guns, they were hitting us in the back with their guns. So what we thought was too hard was actually too mellow. And we changed the writing for it to be more coherent with her experience. In the end, she played it and she loved the game, and her whole family too. But other people from Syria played it and hated the game. They hated the game because they thought it was too easy. Because Dana came from a relatively wealthy family, not a super wealthy family, but relatively wealthy. So the beginning of her journey, she took the plane from Beirut to Turkey. So you can do that in the game. But the vast majority of the people who were concerned by the civil war, they didn't have that kind of money, so they had to flee the country by foot. And so when you experience that side of the reality, and you play a game in which you can just hop on a plane and fly to Istanbul, you feel betrayed. And so some people hated it. But that's kind of what the game says, is that there's not such thing as the typical migrant. Dana exists as a person, and her experience was that she was wealthy enough to be able to start the journey with the plane. So, of course, it's in the game, but also I understand that if you have experienced something even more complicated, you will feel betrayed by that. So that's the limits of reality-inspired games. We can pretend to be exhaustive and show everyone's concern, every concerned people's experience. But what we know is that we've been true to the people that we've worked with, and that's the most important part for us. No more questions? Yes, one?
Do you think that if you're saying that you are making reality-inspired games, that in reality-inspired games it's less, that you have less agency? than in a fantasy game. It's going in the direction that you said it's power fantasies that you have. And in this game, you really often don't have the agency to do anything, just listen to what's happening. And was that really because it was reality inspired?
Yes, I think it's definitely linked. Actually, it's not a rule of thumb. I don't think it would always be true for any reality-inspired topics, but in the topics that we are mentioning, the Bury My Loved One, Wednesdays, both times we made the choice to say the core of the experience is not necessarily about you as a player. Maybe it's about you as a person, because maybe you are a Syrian migrant, or maybe you are a victim of incest. We have no way of knowing that. What we are providing you with is a testimony of someone who experienced a specific reality. So, of course, this should be expected, that in the game you will have less agency than you typically have in a normal game. But what we did in Wednesdays and in Bury My Love is giving you possibilities that are not yours. Like when you play as Majd, you can choose only between the things that Majd would say. And I think that it's giving you back some form of agency, but within the frame of exercising your empathy and being able to forgetting about you as a player and to just be in the shoes of the person you are playing with in their specific situation. So we're giving you choices, but only in their realm and not yours. This is probably one of the reasons why it's complicated commercially, because lots of people, they like to play games when they can do whatever they want, but the real life is not whatever they want. So sometimes, yeah, we need to force them into directions that they would not necessarily explore. Especially when they can throw birds at pigs instead, you know. With Bury My Love, we were competing against Angry Birds and Candy Crush. You know, it's complicated to be exactly in the same store on the same devices and such. But it's also the beauty of what video games are. So. Dana?
Yeah.
Well. I'm sorry, I didn't get.
One thing is, of course, you take this one reality, and you could always believe her what she told you, because often at our house we had 3, 4, 5 Ukrainian persons there, and it was, if you see what they have, also what the life is, was totally different what they told in the evening on FaceTime, for example. Oder? And therefore the question here is for me a little bit, how can you really give reality if you have to trust her?
So we address that in the game, because what she tells Majd is not what she's actually experiencing. We made her, as a character, a liar. She is lying to you sometimes. She's not exactly telling you what's happening to her. But the real reason how we manage that risk, if there is one, because just to remind you, Lucie Soulier was on the ground in Turkey. So she saw Dana. She saw Dana buying stuff. She saw Dana buying a life jacket. She saw Dana on the beach with the smuggler. She was there, the journalist, and I trust the journalist because she's a journalist. But also, what we did is that we reunited dozens of testimonies. Not one, not two, but literally probably hundreds of testimonies. And I have a limited faith in the human being, but I can't, like for the life of me, think about the fact that everybody would be lying to me. You know, I think that it's documented enough. There's been enough journalists on the ground. There's enough testimonies so that it's possible to say what is believable and what is not. And also, we've used sources from every end of the political spectrum. So we went on left-leaning journalism outlets. We went on right-leaning journalism outlets. We read on-the-ground reporting work from far-right reporters who did that too, and who presented the things as in the direction that they wanted. But the facts and the pictures and the testimonies that they brought back, they also told the story. So we tried to be as comprehensive as possible in our documentation phase, so that, of course, it's not Dana's video game. It's not only about her, but of course, also we have a specific relationship of trust with her. But everything she told us was corroborated by a lot of other sources from a lot of other people, NGOs, refugees, journalists, governments, documentaries. It's fairly easy. It's actually a moment in history that's been fairly well covered when you dig into it. When you only look at mainstream TV, you might have a biased representation of it. But if you look as wide as possible, there's lots of things that have been written, recorded, and shot, and of the situation. So yeah. No more questions?
Did you get a lot of hate? Do you make any new enemies?
Yes, a lot of them. So, of course, we had a lot of hate from the far right, people telling us that we were traitors, cuckolds, paid by George Soros, there to just be the source of the destroyed Europe and the end of the white race, which is something that we expected. We had that. We also had some hate from Syrian people who felt misrepresented by the game because Dana is who she is. And for instance, she's an atheist, so she's not Muslim, and she drinks alcohol. So in the game, at one point, you can drink alcohol. And some Syrian people told us, you are disrespecting all the Syrian people in the world because she's a woman and she doesn't have a hijab and she drinks alcohol. But Dana is who she is, and we met her, and she exists, and we wanted to make a point to represent her faithfully in the game. And more surprisingly, we also gathered a lot of hate from people in France who are on the ground helping migrants because they accused us of wanting to make money on the back of migrants and the game being a cash grab and not faithful to the real hardships. And they didn't even ask us whether we were in contact with migrants. They just took it for granted that we were making a video game, so it was to be profitable and to get rich on the back of those poor people that they went on the ground to protect and to help. Well, to those people, I would say always the same thing. I can give you screenshots of my bank account, and you will see if I made a lot of money with the game. But it's kind of sad, but also I understand it because the cultural reputation of game is really bad. And we, as designers and game creators, we must acknowledge that. Lots of people, especially among people who don't play game or did not play game, especially among parents who see their kids playing game and who are convinced that all their kids' problems are due to them playing mind-numbing video games, lots of people think shit about video games. So we have a cultural battle to do in order for people to slightly evolve on what they think video games are and can be. And until then, they will come to the conversation with bias and with negative prejudice against video games because they have seen people running over other people in GTA, because they have seen people shooting people in Call of Duty, etc., etc. So hopefully, some of those people that came to me on Twitter and started insulting me, I always engage in conversation. Hopefully, for some of them, I was able to show them that no, we're not completely crazy, and no, we're not filthy capitalists trying to make a buck on the back of migrants. And hopefully, we moved the needle a little bit, but I guess this battle is going to last for quite a long time still.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I was just wondering, what is the next story that you're gonna hunt?
The next what, sorry?
The next story that you're gonna hunt.
So the next game that we are working on is called Ithaca, and it's a road trip about climate activism and direct action. You're playing as someone who, after being an environmental rights lawyer for 10 years and being completely disgusted by things not happening, has decided to kidnap a big industry captain who's in the back of her truck, and she's going to meet with other activists to do something that she might regret. And on the road to there, you have phone conversations with the people you love. At first, because you want to pretend everything is normal. And then, as they know what you are doing, you are having conversations about why you are doing it, whether it's the best thing to do, what else you could be doing. The idea is to just ask the question. As we all know, the science is pretty clear. We are heading right in the wall, and we are absolutely not reacting at the level that we should. And that's a conversation I often have with my loved ones. And so we wanted to put that in a game for just to ask the question, why is the situation that way, and what could we do to change it, without having any idea of what the good way to react to the situation. Only way to react to the situation is only to open the conversation. So it's once again a narrative game that asks uncomfortable questions that hopefully helps people find creative answers.
Is it then also one protagonist that you is it going to be like in a similar way? So you follow one person,
Yes.
and then you can choose.
You're driving actually. You're in the car driving, and up until you reach you have between the start of the game and the moment you reach your destination to make a decision about what you are actually going to do.
And which topic will what is the channel or the company you are?
So it's a petrol company. So it's a big oil company. It's a very. She starts with a very like direct action take on what's going on. Okay, they're not listening to us. We have to do something. We are going to humiliate them in public. So I just kidnapped one. My other friends kidnapped others, and then we are going to meet and humiliate them, so that the whole world knows that they are actually responsible for the situation. Of course, this is not something we necessarily see as the best thing that everybody should do, but that asks the question: if not, what would you do? Yeah. Yes, and that's the idea. The idea is just to have conversations about, yes, you want to talk me out of doing what I'm doing. What other arguments do you have to present to me that would be more convincing than doing that?
Amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome. No other questions? Thanks a lot for your attention. I guess I don't know if you're... Okay, thanks a lot.
Yes, we just have a last slide. Thank you so much, Florent, for this wonderful talk. Just let's give him a big hand. Thank you. So tomorrow, so this is the end of the first day, and tomorrow you have like a next opportunity to work together with Florent in this workshop in the afternoon. And before that, we have two very lovely talks again. Oh, thank you for that. And we start at the university now. So the first day was here in the Swiss Game Hub, but the second day will be at the University of Zurich. The room number is wrong, but what is the room? Yeah, it's 18, not 09. It's 18, yeah, E18. But we'll also have like a poster there. And we will be there and guide you. Please come also to tomorrow for these lovely talks by Jesper and Christian, who are here. And more on AAA games, on Fortnite, and also on Fallout. And in the afternoon, it's the wonderful reality-based game workshop. We very much invite you to this one too. And then we have a goodbye. And this is the very first New Game Plus Critical Thinking with Video Games event. And we hope that we'll do a second one next year, probably as a conference. Yes. So thank you very much, Florent, again, for this wonderful talk. Thank you. And thank you for coming. Thank you.